pensions from state income tax. I've co-sponsored the local home bonus program that we have here. And I have been a very strong proponent of veterans. And, you know, I do think, again, this is the type of thing that you see, which is very unfortunate. You know, in Massachusetts, veterans issues were never political. They were always off the table. That's why we are the most generous state in the entire country when it comes to taking care of our veterans here at home. And the fact of the matter is that there was never a vote that took place to cut veterans' benefits in the state Senate.
Okay, thank you. Seth Walton.
Sure, so let me just address that. You know, if you ask any career politician, he can point to times when he or she has supported veterans. Of course, there's been times when he's supported veterans. But if you look at this vote, with all due respect, Senator Tassay, in 2009, you voted against the state budget, which increased funding for the Department of Veteran Services by $4.4 million. And you explained that you took that vote for two reasons. One, because it increased spending, and two, because it was the Republican thing to do. You voted the party line. You were one of only 4 senators in the state to take that vote. But you also voted against the 2010 and 2011 budgets, which increased veterans' benefits while cutting $2.75 billion from the budget. So there's an example where voting for the budget would have actually cut spending, and yet you still took a vote against a budget that included increases for veterans. The reality is that veterans on the ground today do not feel supported by Congress. They don't feel supported by the president. Veterans are struggling. Veterans have high suicide rates, high homelessness. Veterans want education benefits. We want to serve the country again. So until I hear that veterans are getting the support that they need, I'm going to continually and always fight for veterans' benefits. Now, with regards to the super PACs, Senator Tassay has received $800,000 worth of ads from a super PAC sponsored by a hedge fund billionaire on Wall Street. I was just recently endorsed by Larry Lessig, who is the leader in campaign finance reform across the country. He only endorsed one candidate in this race, and I'm very proud to have his endorsement, because I believe we do need to get this big money out of politics, and you can be sure that when I go to Washington, I'll fight to make that happen.
2 minutes, Mr. Stockwell.
Thank you. It doesn't say much for Larry Lessig. I think that it's disingenuous. It's disingenuous, it's the right word for this, to say that it's not good and we shouldn't do it, and you're in favor of campaign finance reform and then accept it. You need to disavow it. We need to take money out of politics. Corporations are not people. They shouldn't have those rights. I'm opposed to the use of it. I never could compete with the parties on fundraising, so I didn't try. And half of the funds I've got in mine. And so with that kind of skin in the game, I'm very careful about what my campaign does and what I spend my money on. I've got a lot to talk about with reforming federal politics. You'll find it in my platform. It's 18 pages long. It's on my website. You can download it. You can read all about it. 25, 30 different policies. Okay? One of them, term limits and lobbying. I'll serve no more than 4 terms. I don't believe in career politicians. I don't think it's right. I don't think that's why we should elect with these people. Okay? I will never serve as a paid lobbyist, ever, after I am removed from office, whether it's by my own reason, my own desire, or I'm voted out of office. Campaign finance reform, I'm all for it. Endless campaigning. I don't know that it's right to campaign for Congress for a year. I don't agree with that. So when I'm elected, when I'm up for re-election, I'll start campaigning on June 1st of that year. And I think that the public's going to be very happy about this. All these advertisements do is dumb down the electorate and keeps us from the more important issues that we need to be talking about. Thank you.
Thank you.
I agree with everything Chris just said, and I do the 6 years rather than the 8. But I want to go back to this just for a minute, because I want people to understand, this was when we're talking about with this ad, this was a $28 billion budget. And, you know, that's like saying that when Ted Kennedy or John Kerry voted against one of George Bush's budgets, they were voting against veterans. I mean, it's ridiculous. And I just want people to know that there was never a vote that took place in the state senate, not once, to cut veterans' benefits that I, in any way, voted against veterans for. And I think the ad is a lie. Tom Kelly said it was a lie. John Keller looked at it and said it was a lie, and that's what it is, a lie.
The ad says that you took this vote. That's not a lie. The reality is that in the last 3 years in office, you voted against over $18 million in veterans' benefits. Now, I'm not saying that you took those votes purposefully to hurt veterans.
No, that's what your ad does say.
Not leadership. Reality.
That's what your ad does say, Seth, and it has a wheelchair of a veteran, you know, just for good measure. And I think it's
with all due respect, I'd like
despicable.
to finish my time. Thank you. Actually, John Keller, you should watch it tonight because he had a lot more critical things to say about your ad against me, implying that I'm beholden to Wall Street donors when you actually received more money from Wall Street. The reality is this. Senator, you say that you're willing to break with the party. You say that you're willing to stand up to the party leadership, and that's what you're going to do in Washington. Well, a great time to do that would have been when you had a budget before you that would cut spending, as Republicans like to do, but also increase benefits for veterans. That's the kind of vote
We should be talking about jobs and the economy, not this.
Okay, we're gonna let Christopher Stockwell talk, and then we'll go through one more time.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think the primary focus should be about jobs and the economy. This is wasted, I don't know, what, 5 minutes? And whatever amount of time it takes for you to, to get your direct mail from the postcards or watch these silly ads on TV that's what you're raising all this money for, is to produce those things in the direct mailers that are taking the important issues and putting them in the back and focusing on things that cause divisiveness. That's what this is about. It needs to stop. It's part of the problem. If you're part of that, you're part of the problem.
I just want to point out, Seth mentioned the 2010 budget. I did vote against the 2010 budget. I offered $1 billion of cost savings, but I voted against the 2010 budget because it increased taxes. It increased the sales tax by $600 million. It increased the gas tax. It increased the meals tax, and it cut local aid by over $400 million. Every single town around this Commonwealth suffered, and that's the bottom line. And you know, if you don't agree with the spending plan, that doesn't mean you disagree with, or that you're opposed to, you know, you just can't pull out one little section and say, you know, you're against children because you voted against the budget, or you're against this, or you're against that. It's disingenuous, and again, people are calling you out on it, so it's wrong.
Then you ought to provide an alternative. You ought to provide a way that you can have a different budget that increases veterans' benefits, because that's a priority that we should all meet. Now, the reality is that there are an awful lot of people criticizing your ads as well. The hypocritical way that you attack me for the support I've been able to get across the country when you yourself are going to fundraise in Washington and Miami and in New York. So there's a lot being said out there. But at the end of the day, what people need to know is that I will always fight for veterans. I will always fight for seniors. I will always fight for...
So we're gonna give Christopher Stockwell the last word on this one. 30 seconds.
Oh no, I don't care to waste any more time.
The next question comes from Deanne Healy, and it goes to Seth Moulton.
Funding for arts and cultural programs tend to be the first to get cut. How important do you think the arts are as an economic driver to communities?
It's a great question because it's incredibly important, especially here in the 6th District. We have more arts in the 6th than in many other parts of the country and in all of New England. So it's a very important part of our economy. A lot of tourists come here because of arts. But arts is also part of education. There's a connection between music and science, for example. When I started playing the piano when I was 5 years old, and I studied physics in college, and a lot of people now see a connection between those two things. The problem is right now in public education, a lot of times art and music, those are the first courses to be cut. And so young kids are growing up in a world where they are forced to learn a test. They're taught to the test all day long, but they are not educated as a whole child. I know this very well because my sister is a public school teacher, and she's a creative, innovative public school teacher. She talks a lot about the exciting ways that she would like to bring the U.S. history experience to her students. But the reality is that in today's world, she's increasingly being asked just to teach to a test. And it's these same policies that are cutting arts education out of our public schools, so that kids growing up don't develop the love for arts that is so important to people in this part of the country. So I will always be a fierce advocate for arts, not just for funding, although that's very important, not just for local organizations, although that's critical, especially here in this district, but for arts and education, because that's where it all begins.
Mr. Socko.
Yes, I am as well a lover of arts. The most fun I had in high school, I did a lot of different things. I really overachieved in high school, but when I was a senior, I got up the courage to go out for South Pacific, and I was Luther Billis, which was the comic lead in South Pacific, and I had the best month or two of my high school career there. And I then went to Northwestern University, which is a very famous theater program, and I didn't do theater, which I totally regret. But one of the guys in my fraternity was Dermot Mulroney, who was a famous Hollywood actor, and so that was really cool, hanging out with theater types. And at Marblehead, where I'm from, I was in Oliver about 10 years ago, and was just in the chorus, and I just loved it. So I've also been in my church. I've been in the choir for 17 of the last 20 years. So music and theater is important to me. As a businessman, it's very important to this district. And again, what I will try to do is establish the 6th District Economic Transformation Council. One of the competitive advantages we will have as a region, we do have as a region, is our arts, our thriving arts community, whether it's Gloucester or Beverly or Marblehead or Salem or Lynn or wherever. We have Newburyport, we have tremendous arts community, and so that makes us just differentiate, and people want to be a part of that because it's all about quality of life. Without that, quality of life just kind of goes down. And so I'm a big supporter of funding that. My mother was head of the Board of Education in our town for about 12 years, and we funded arts at the expense of athletics, and I think that's a pretty good thing to do as well.
Well, I thought I looked good because I started playing the piano when I was 5.
Richard, well, I play the piano, but I'm a 50-year student right now. So, let me just say, I do think when you're asking about economic development and what role arts play, I do think it plays cultural attractions. They play a huge role in economic development. That's your strategy as a local official. I sit on the board at the Salem Theater, and I've seen the way that that's reinvigorated the downtown. Because once you get the theater in place, and the mayor, Lynn, has told me, once the auditorium really came to life, now you have restaurants opening in Lynn. I know it's been important in Beverly, where they have an arts district, in Salem. And you know, one of the things I did as a legislator is I sat down with all of the local officials in my district and found out what everybody's economic strategy was in each community. That's what I'll do as a congressman, and find out what each community is striving for and figure out ways to assist them. Because that is one very important job that a congressman has, and I'm very proud of the fact that serving the Senate district I did, I could drive around that Senate district and point to different things in the community that I helped the community do that made each community a better place to live and work and raise a family. And that's what I want to be able to do as the congressman for this district. And I'll be in a really good position to be able to do that. As a member of the majority party, I will have a seat at the table. We do not have anybody right now from Massachusetts when issues come up, no matter what the issue is, in Washington, sitting, representing our state, and really taking the concerns that people have here off the back burner and into the, right front and center. And that's one of the things I think I can do for this district.
30 seconds, Seth?
Sure. This is also an area where we see some of the effects of the sequestration in Washington, the government shutdown. When I was starting this campaign, one of the first things we did last fall was we went out and volunteered at the National Park Service booth in Salem, because the Republicans in Washington had shut down the government and there was no funding. So the most important month for Salem's economy, they didn't have anybody to welcome tourists and tell them where to go. So we had to volunteer there. That's the effect that the Republican majority has had in Washington, right here at a local level.
Thank you.
I think that this is a place where we can find compromise, isn't it? It's got to be, we can have bipartisan resolve to make sure that we maintain the civilization that was created here in the United States, and it's not going to be, it thrives with our arts and our culture. These are some of the most important things that give us a good quality of life. And so I just think it's essential, and I will support it in every way I can and be an active participant in the arts community, supporting it as a congressman.
Thank you.
Thank you.
30 seconds.
I guess I just reiterate, I will work very hard with all the local officials. I'll forge great relationships with the local officials, as I've done in the past. Find out what is needed. I can tell you right now, up in Gloucester, what Gloucester needs is a congressman who is in the majority party when the Magnuson-Stevens bill is rewritten, to be sitting at the table to do the things that are necessary and bring the suggestions forward to help make the situation of overregulation right now better, and put fishermen back to work and let them fish again.
Thank you. Well, we've covered everything from Tupacs to South Pacific. So we have a piano down here. We could do it. We can have everybody go down. Trump right here. The next question comes from Christian.
Chair, first seat.
Immigration policy. Tell me what your plans are for reform of immigration law. And if you could explain if you have a stance on amnesty for undocumented workers.
And that goes to you, Mr. Falco.
Oh, yeah. I, like most Americans, am in favor of strengthening our borders. I remember back before, this is before summer break for Congress, right? But the Republicans and the Democrats decided that they didn't want to handle immigration until after summer break. Came back, and then one or both sides decided, well, we don't want to handle it until after the midterm elections. And Democrats and Republicans out there, that's part of the problem here. We lack political courage, we lack integrity to be able to do the right things for the people, to solve the important issues of our time. This is one of the most critical issues facing us, and we kicked it down the road so we could have a better summer vacation, and we wouldn't have to deal with it until after an election campaign. And that is disturbing. It should disturb everyone in this room. So, first of all, we got to start fixing Washington, and the best way to do that is to start electing independents. That's the best way to start. It's going to happen from the outside. It's not going to happen from the inside. In terms of immigration, I want to have stronger borders. President Obama suggested, I believe, about a $3.85 billion program to strengthen the borders earlier in the year, and the Republicans offered $780 million. I'm pretty close. I don't have those exact figures. Maybe a wonk out there will help me on that. I would have accepted it if I was the president. Okay, I'll take that $800 million to get started. So, yeah, I think that what we need to do is we need to have transformational solutions. That's what we need to do to fix this problem. We need to partner with some of our neighbors in countries in the Western Hemisphere, and we need to help create better opportunity in their countries through education, infrastructure, and better public safety. We can do that, and I think that we can even make money doing it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chisay.
Well, first of all, I'm all in favor of legal immigration. My great-grandparents came here from Italy. I'm third generation. You know, but I do think that, you know, what they do in Washington right now is all this comprehensive this, comprehensive that. Obamacare, 2,500-page bill. Nobody still knows what's in it. Dodd-Frank, another 2,300-page bill. Rather than having this big, huge immigration bill that really nobody knows what's in it, trust me, at this point, what we should be doing is taking care of our border security first. And you know, most people don't even look at border security right now as an immigration issue. They're looking at it as a national security issue. 40% of all the people who are in this country illegally came here on visas and then just disappeared. So not only do we have to secure our borders, we have to figure out a system that we can keep track of people who are coming into the country and figure out actually who's in the country. So let's break that off of the bill and do that first. And then figure out something, you know, for the people who are here. And I would not give citizenship. I don't think that that's right for the people who have waited years and years and years and stood in line and are still waiting to come and become citizens of this country. I support what Marissa DeFranco suggested, who endorsed me, one of the Democrats running in the primary, to set up some type of green card or a work visa for the people who are here to take care of that. I think that this is a huge problem. I can't believe the governor just announced that he's going to give out non-compliant driver's licenses. It doesn't make any sense to me. Seth Moulton supports driver's licenses for illegal immigrants. I don't. He supports amnesty for those who are here illegally. I do not. And I think that we have to have common sense when we look at this, because if we do move ahead, the same thing's going to happen. The minute we, you know, like they did in the 80s, we passed an immigration bill, and then as soon as it passed, Ronald Reagan always said it was the biggest mistake he made, because the country was flooded again with more people who are illegal because we didn't secure the borders and fix our system first.
Right. Thank you. Seth.
So I support comprehensive immigration reform, and that means several very important things. First, it means we've got to secure our borders. Legal immigration has always been a fundamental part of our country, of our history, of our economy, and of our future. But illegal immigration has got to stop. We got to start with securing our borders. But in concert with that, we should provide a path to citizenship for the undocumented workers who are here. It is simply unrealistic to send them home. Now that does not mean amnesty. I do not support amnesty, and I was very clear about that, Senator Say. I do not support amnesty. The approach I support is the bipartisan approach that has already passed the Senate, where if you want to go on this path to citizenship, you first have to pass a criminal background check. You second have to pay a fine, and third, you have to pay all back taxes. Now what this does is it takes these undocumented workers and it puts them on the tax rolls. They won't even be eligible for a green card for 10 years. But during that time, they will be paying the same taxes that all of us pay. It'll help our economy, it'll help our national debt, it'll be a step forward for our country. The Senate passed this bill. It's supported by law enforcement. It's supported by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. It's supported by faith-based organizations. It's supported by the startup community. It's supported by John McCain of Arizona. It's supported by Senator Marco Rubio of Florida. And yet, Senator DeSay is to the right of them. He's more conservative on this issue. So I don't understand, Senator, how you're going to go to Washington and be a moderating influence on the extremists in your party, when on this issue that's so important to Americans, that has been proposed in a bipartisan manner and has already passed the Senate, you're more conservative than several of the leading Republicans in Washington today.
Mr. DeSay is a moderator. I celebrate the diversity of our nation. I think it's incredible. I think it makes us the greatest nation on earth because of that diversity. And so that's where I stand there. When it comes to a legal path of citizenship for citizenship of undocumented immigrants. I'm in favor of that. For long-standing undocumented immigrants who've tried to do the right thing.
We are the most generous country in the world. We let 1 million people, we naturalize 1 million people here every year. No other country does that with that many people. So we are very, very generous. But a country that can't control its own borders is going to cease to become a country pretty quickly. And I would just say that I think my approach is common sense. You know, when I was a state senator, I filed a bill every year. Housing authority directors in Massachusetts could not ask anybody whether they were a citizen when they applied for public housing. Now, here you have tens of thousands of people, Massachusetts citizens, on waiting lists that can't get into public housing because other people are taking up their spots. And I don't think that that's fair. I think it's common sense. And the driver's license is just common. What is a non-compliant driver's license? I don't understand what that is or why we would have one.
Law enforcement supports that because it will increase public safety. But I want to talk about another place where we need to be cognizant of immigration policy and the effects that it has on our local communities. Because the city of Lynn has been designated as a destination city for immigrants by the federal government, and there are an awful lot of immigrants coming in. It's a resource for Lynn. If you go to some of the restaurants downtown, you can see the value that diversity brings to the community. But it also places a burden on the schools, where it's tough. They don't have the resources to teach English to all these new students. So we've got to fight for those resources for communities like Lynn that are struggling under the burden of immigrants coming here.
Okay, we went over a little bit, so if you all want to go through it one more time.
Yeah. I would just say one of the things I will oppose is the president acting unilaterally and issuing an executive order after the election. He's waiting until after the election to do this and bypass the legislature, the Congress. This is the same thing he did with younger people and why we had such a crisis on our borders with unaccompanied minors. You know, in the city of Lynn, when a kid comes into the school system, the school or the city, it is illegal for them to ask the child how old they are. I would file a law that allows them to do that because there are a lot of very older people, maybe they don't even qualify for school, but definitely older people, they have to put them all in the 9th grade. And that's such a disruption for the school officials the school system. That's just a common sense thing, I think, that should be done. And why it isn't, I don't know.
Okay, real quick, any last
Yeah,
word?
I mean, I definitely agree with what Mr. Moulton has said about Lynn. He's spot on. And this is just a really significant, huge issue for Lynn and the school system and all the people of Lynn. So I think that I would call for a 1-year and 2-year look-backs from the federal government that every nickel that's been spent on this in every manner Lynn needs to be compensated for. And furthermore, there's communities around Lynn and all of our communities in northeastern Massachusetts that should be in some way, not necessarily financially, but in some way should be helping support the indoctrination of these children into our system until they're returned.
Thank you.
Sure, I'll just briefly point out that I think one place where we all agree is that the president should not be putting this issue off. That this isn't an issue that we can delay addressing in the United States. It's really a crisis that's facing us today. We shouldn't wait for electoral politics to address it.
Well, it shouldn't be done by executive action.
Okay, well, we've come to, we're almost out of our hour, so it's time to move on to closing statements. We picked out names out of a hat, a Red Sox hat, not quite as lucky this year. The first 2-minute closing statement goes to Richard Tissett.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to be here, to actually be able to be a candidate for Congress. I've lived in this district all my life. I live on Main Street. I literally work on Main Street. And I consider myself very much a part of the American dream. I've spent my life serving people, solving problems, and bringing people together. As a state senator, I was able to work with both Democrats and Republicans and deliver when it came to protecting seniors, working families, and most importantly, helping our most vulnerable. My oldest sister is disabled and has been all her life, so I know from personal experience how important it is for our government to have a strong social safety net. At the same time, I understand that we have limited resources, and spending needs to be prioritized, and that taxpayer dollars must be spent with great care. I always tell people my best qualification for office is the fact that I've owned a small business, and I can't tell you how many nights I've lied in bed, staring at the ceiling, saying, oh my God, how am I going to make the payroll, pay the bills, keep the doors of the business open. So I understand the anxiety that a lot of small businesses and individuals throughout this district have. We're having a really tough time with this economy. I have a record of being able to work across the aisle with people and getting things done. And I would say, I think one of the most important things in this election is the fact that in Washington, you do have a group of Democrats and Republicans. They don't want to work together. They love their parties more than they love the country. I will always put the country first. When I was a state senator and Mitt Romney was governor, I voted with him 50% of the time, against him 50%